Okay. Hi, hello everyone. Today you are listening to the audio to the presentation regarding the topic of drug overdose, as you can see from the title on the first slide of our presentation. I'm not really sure if it's necessary to introduce ourselves since you can't see us, but I'm Teresa, first year med student, and you're listening to my annoying voice right now, so I hope you won't suffer for that long. Okay, so as you can see, we've divided our presentation into a few parts in which we would like to give you at least a bit of a glimpse into the topic of drug overdose. We don't have much time to go heavily into details, so we'll just go quickly through the most crucial parts to give you at least some kind of a basic knowledge regarding this topic. Okay, so here on the screen, as you can see, is a list of points we will go through. We'll start with some general facts. Then we'll move to types of overdose because there are quite a few of them and they differ from each other. Then we'll move to signs and symptoms, basically to how to recognize if someone or you yourself has become overdosed. Then we'll focus on how to treat someone in your surrounding with this kind of torment or how to provide first aid to them if needed. So what is it in general? How shall we describe it? It's basically the state in which you get yourself by taking too much, either intentionally or accidentally, some kind of a substance, taking more than is advised or recommended. And since we're doctors to be, we can call it professionally as a pathologic level of drug toxicity, which doesn't allow your body to physiologically function properly. It is also known among people as a shortcut, OD. An overdose can lead to serious medical complications, including death. It is pretty much always fatal if the medical treatment isn't provided quickly. The severity, vážnost in Czech, of the situation depends on the type of a drug, depends also on the amount taken and the medical history of the person who overdosed. As I mentioned before, the overdose state depends on the type of drug ingested by the sufferer. Firstly, we'll start with the depressant overdose, which is mostly common among patients who suffer from depression or anxiety and take these drugs on a prescription from a doctor. Depressants affect CNS, which means central nervous system. They basically slow brain activity by increasing activity by GABA acid, which is an inhibitor and is used for treating previously mentioned problems. These drugs include benzodiazepines such as Xanax or diazepam, non-benzodiazepines, and barbiturates. By the way, it's really important to pronounce these words. Secondly, we have opioid overdose. Opioids are substances that are derived from opioid poppy, which means maxety in Czech, and act on opioid receptors to produce morphine-like effects. They're primarily used to provide pain relief, suppress diarrhea, and suppress cough, and etc. But they're also one of the easiest drugs to overdose on. They slow bodily function. Examples are morphine, heroin, tramadol, oxycodone, and methadone. Due to their effect to the part of the brain which regulates breathing, opioids in high doses can cause respiratory difficulties and eventually death. For opioids, we have so-called opioid triad, which includes three main symptoms of overdose, such as pinpoint pupils, which means really tiny pupils of the person's eye, unconsciousness, and respiratory depression. And for the last slide of mine, no, it's actually not the last one. Right now I'm going to talk about the most common one, which is alcohol overdose, also known as alcohol poisoning, which is a consequence of consumption of a large amount of alcohol in a short period of time. So if you don't basically drink only like 1 shot per hour, your body doesn't stand a chance in processing in it. Alcohol, after a first sip, races to your brain and slows down chemical pathways, which results in mood swings, slows your reflexes, and throws off your balance, which I must say I'm pretty familiar with. It also dehydrates you and therefore can cause brain damage in a long-term period. And now I'm just gonna quickly go through the symptoms and signs of overdose, which we really shouldn't overlook. Firstly, I find it quite important to remind you the difference between a symptom and a sign. Symptoms is usually what a patient feels inside, and a sign is the thing that can be observed from the outside, for example by the doctor. The common symptoms of overdose include nausea and vomiting, and drowsiness, which means ospalos for those who didn't know, including me, loss of consciousness, then difficulty breathing or difficulty walking, change of skin color to more like a bluish tone. We can also see it on the lips. Then we can find the person quite aggressive or violent. Then the person can also have like enlarged pupils or pinpoint pupils, which always depends on the type of a drug. It can cause different sizes always. Then the overdose person can have tremors, can be sweaty, and can have weird deviations of body temperature to either abnormally high or even to hypothermia. And I would say this is everything for me. Now we'll just jump to Blanca's part, and I guess we'll see each other at the end of this audio. Or more suitably, hear each other at the end.
If you believe the patient has overdosed, take following steps. First, assess the patient. Check the patient's alertness level, and if the patient isn't fully conscious and alert, turn them on their side to prevent them from choking on their vomit. Ensure the patient is not left alone. Second step, reassure the patient. Bear in mind that with some drugs, patient can become aggressive and agitated. Try to keep the patient calm. Talk to the patient in a quiet and reassuring manner. Enlist friends or family to calm, and if the patient becomes dangerous, consider calling the police. Third step, identify the drug taken. Ask what the patient has taken, how much and when it was taken, and of course by what method. It means whether it was swallowed, inhaled or injected. If the patient is not awake, look for evidence that might assist the hospital staff with treatment and keep any container, syringe or needle and any vomit to aid analysis and identifications. Point number 4. Remove unnecessary clothing. Some drugs create serious overheating of the body. So if this is noticed, remove unnecessary clothing to expose skin to the air and cool it down. And the last point, call your emergency number. Never wait to see if the overdose will wear off and call even if the person seems not to be experiencing overdose symptoms. Some effects of an overdose are insidious. And now I want to say what not to do for drug overdoses. So the first point, don't pat the person in the shower. This is most common reaction in movies and on television, and it is bad idea. Second point, don't let them sleep. Keeping the patient awake because it will be easier to monitor their condition. The third point, don't try to make them throw up, because the person can choke on their own vomit. Next point, don't wait for the drug to wear off. Call the ambulance immediately. Point number 5, don't try to feed the patient. Some food can have adverse effects. 6, don't leave the patient alone. Stay with them. And the last point, don't put yourself in an unsafe position. Does mean don't try to restrain a violent person and instead call the police.
Okay, and for the end, I would really love to thank you for staying with us and listening to our, I would love to say podcast, but it was only audio. And yes, just remember, kids, stay away from drugs. And if you have any further questions, you can always contact us on our social media pages and don't really have to hesitate for that. So, thank you.